1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
The Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All of it.
One of resistance.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Rebellion.
Rebellion is built on hope.
And redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 41 of Star Wars Reactions. We have a fun show planned for you today, and it's one that we've really been cooking up for a while. We've been actually planning to discuss this topic for about 2 months now, and it just keeps getting pushed off, but it finally worked out where we are going to have a fun show discussing it today. So we're not going to waste any time. My name is Aaron Harris. I am one half of your hosting team here, and joining me is an incredible guy. He's awesome. Trying to think of a good one, but it's not hitting me right now. So let's just say hello to David Motters. David, what's up, brother?
Hey, my brother. I am here, and I'm excited to record with you as always, and I've been trying to do my best to make sure I say that I'm ready to react.
Very cool, very cool. You know, the only thing that was popping into my head is because right now I'm sitting on my desk because I have nowhere else to put it, is this big Lego Disney castle that my daughter and I put together. And we got all these Lego minifigures sitting around it, that Disney minifigures sitting around it that they sold in mystery blind packs. And when I was looking around, trying to come up with a comparison like Chewie to my Han to my Chewie, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I looked over, and the only thing that was popping to my head is the Anna to my Elsa, and I wasn't going to go there. You could do a whole psychology corner episode on that one.
That would. I do think the best one, and it is the most appropriate, and is, I'm Chewie to your Han. You're definitely Han, and I'm Chewie. And although when I've been at Hollywood Studios, actually I need to send some of those pictures over to you to put on Instagram, and I need to get on Instagram. But there's several pictures of me with Chewbacca there, where you can get pictures. Yep. And man, is that person tall in there? They're tall. It's like, wow. So, but I do like that. I like how the Han and Chewie one. There's other ones, and we'll keep coming up with them. But that I think is right now the best example.
Very cool. Very cool. What would have been perfect for today's episode would have been the Ido to my yeah. I'm going
right. ITO to 12, yeah.
ITO to Aiden. That would have been perfect for this episode. Oh, I should have looked down at the notes instead of looking around my desk.
That's right. We got plenty of notes. Holy mackerel.
Yes, we do. So let's get going. First thing I do have to say, though, before we get into the news and everything is, last episode or the episode before, we were talking and I asked the question, which book should I read next? I did do Lost Stars, and I am beating myself up for not reading that earlier. That was so good.
I can truly say this, Aaron. I told you so.
You truly can. Yes, absolutely. You and many, many other people can say that. I really enjoyed Lost Stars. And if you haven't read it, read it. It was, oh my gosh, it was incredible. I did the Audible version of it. And the guy who read it, it wasn't Mark Thompson, it was somebody else, did a fantastic job of it. I was really sold by the performances. It was awesome. It was really good. I'm trying to remember who read that for Audible. Pierce Cravens narrated it for the audiobook. And it was really good. I enjoyed it. So
nice. I'm so glad you did. And you and I've talked a lot about physical copies compared to Audible. At that time, I was doing all physical copies. And I'm looking at the book right now. I have it there, and I crushed it when it came out. And I still think, I don't think I know, it is still my favorite Claudia Gray Star Wars novel, just ahead of Master and Apprentice, ahead of Into the Dark, which is obviously one of the High Republic books. I have not read, well, Bloodline. Ooh, Bloodline's really good too, but I have not read her, what is it, Leia, Princess of Alderaan book, so not sure about that. But yeah, Lost Stars, it's my favorite by her, and it's tough to beat.
Yes, definitely. It was definitely, it was, oh man, it was so good. It was really, really good. So, all right. So we just got a lot of fun stuff going on. Couple things in the news that we'll go over first. We're recording this on April 27th, 2021. It's a Thursday, or excuse me, it's a Tuesday, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it's a Tuesday. And this is day 20 of Star Wars Reactions Facebook Held Hostage. That's just what I'm calling it because I can't get anywhere with it. If you've noticed our I've had a couple people reach out to me. Yes, our Facebook page is still down. No communication from Facebook as to why or if we will ever get it back. So, yeah, nothing new to report there. Just day 20 held hostage. So, in brighter news, we are exactly 1 week away from the premiere of The Bad Batch.
I'm ready.
I am stoked. I am ready. This is going to be an incredible show. I'm so excited. I tell you, it's got probably one of the best voice casts assembled. It's starring D. Bradley Baker and 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 Steven Stanton.
I was gonna yes, and Steven Stanton. I was gonna add that. Yes, beat me to it. Yeah.
I am looking forward to that. Ming Wen is going to be in there as well as Fennec Shan. I'm just so excited for this show. 70-minute premiere episode, May 4th. May the 4th be with you. It's going to be great. Matter of fact, that's a Tuesday, and we always record on Tuesdays, so we're going to watch the show that day, and you're going to get our raw reactions that night after we've only seen it once or twice during the day instead of, a few days to soak it in. So it's going to be fun. We're going to record that night, so you'll get our reactions on May the 5th be with you is when we'll release that episode, which will contain a special guest as well. Who is it? You just have to listen and find out. But we're super excited about it. So be on the lookout for that. And that'll actually kick us off. This episode kicks us off into weekly episodes again. And we'll be running weekly episodes reviewing The Bad Batch for the run of the series. So that's awesome. Now, of course, every other episode we had been doing profile episodes, profiling somebody. Those will be pretty much suspended till after The Bad Batch ends. But yeah, we got so much going on. It's going to be great. I am so excited for a new series. It's just going to be good.
Well, I'll say this, Aaron and I have been wanting to get this person on for a long time. It's taken some work and some persistence, and I'm just really excited to have this person on, and I hope everybody else will enjoy it too. So yes, really looking forward to having a special guest on that night when we record. So it'll be fresh for that person as well.
Exactly. It's going to be fun. So be on the lookout for that next week. Other great news today, like I said, today, April 27th, was the release day for Thrawn Ascendancy Greater Good. I have been chomping at the bit for this book since I finished Chaos Rising. So I'm so excited. I downloaded it to Audible first thing this morning. Had to finish Lost Stars first, so I finished Lost Stars and then immediately started Greater Good. And great book so far. I'm really loving this. And then we got the final book, Lesser Evil, coming out later this year.
Is it in the fall, right?
Yeah, I want to say October, November. They said it was sometime in the fall. I think I have to go back and look. Speaking of which, but yeah, it's coming out, so we'll get to wrap up this series really soon. So the Thrawn series has been great for me. I love the Thrawn books. Thrawn is one of my favorite characters, honestly. So this is very, very awesome for me to take care of and watch, and I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So
Well,
excited.
I did the same thing as you. I downloaded it on Audible because, again, you and I have said we're trying to, well, at least I know, I've been trying to get over to all Audible. Already enjoyed it. On Sunday, I'd flown home from Michigan or back here to Florida, and I was driving from Tampa back up to Ocala. And what's great about, I can't read while I'm driving, but I listened to kind of the last little bit of Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising, book one, and really got, I'm like, oh, yes. Okay, yes. And that's how it ends. Okay, all right, here's all the players. I got them in my mind. And then this morning I knew I would download it, and I started listening this morning in my drive to work. So it sounds pretty fun, and it really helped me to kind of listen to those last few things. I actually, full disclosure, I had listened to all of the memories. They had like 13 different memories chapters, and I listened to all those, and then listened to the last chapter, and it really got me up to speed for the second book. So I'm with you. I'm already enjoying it. Timothy Zahn's got me wondering who's who here and how this is going to play out and so on. But looking forward to finishing Greater Good, and then, of course, like you said, Lesser Evil later this year. So that's kind of cool. I'm glad it's not a year wait for the next one.
No, yeah, me too. I'm glad it's not. The exact release date is November 16th.
Oh.
November 16th for Lesser Evil. So it's coming. So excellent. A lot of great things happening. So that pretty much wraps up all the news that we're going to discuss tonight. So let's go ahead and hit our topic of conversation for the night. As I said, this is something that we have been planning on doing for a while. And we wanted to do it actually before the third book came out, and then we're like, you know what, let's just wait. It got postponed, and then we're like, well, you know what, let's just finish the third book and do a whole trilogy book. And we're like, okay, let's do it. Yeah. So Alphabet Squadron is the topic of conversation tonight. 3-book trilogy by Alexander Freed. A very exciting series. I thoroughly enjoyed these books. These were fun reads, excellent. They pretty kicked off in 2019. I want to say is when it was. 2019 is when the first book, Alphabet Squadron, came out. And it was actually what's the word? There was actually something that came out before it as a kind of like a preview of what was coming in a a limited series, 5-book comic series from Marvel called TIE Fighter.
Right.
Which was a great series. I read it when it first was released, and it's somewhere in one of my boxes around here, and I could not find it for the life of me to reread before this episode. But it was a good little series, 5 books. Not much in ways of tie-in, I would say, to the exact story that you read in Alphabet Squadron, but it was nice it was almost like a wet your whistle for the type of story you were going to get with focusing on pilots and stuff, just like the old Road Squadron books. So, from the expanded universe. So it was a little wet your whistle there to get going. But Alphabet Squadron was kicked it all off and was kicked off a tremendous trilogy. 3 books. First one, Alphabet Squadron. Second one, Shadowfall. Third one, Victory's Price, which was actually released earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, all 3 written by, of course, by Alexander Freed, who has done previous Star Wars work too. I remember Battlefront 2 book, the Battlefront book, the original Battlefront book, was written by him, which was really good. So he's got some history there, and these were great. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're going to start with Book 1, Alphabet Squadron, which was basically our introduction to the characters, an introduction to the story, what was going on. Fun book, honestly, and what I thoroughly enjoyed about this book. And just to preface everything before we proceed any further, throughout the discussion, we will discuss items from the books as we go. So there will be some spoilers that come up through the conversation. If you have not read these books and you are planning on reading these books and you don't want anything spoiled, you may want to save this episode for a later date. If you're like some of my friends who really don't care to read, this is probably the only way they're going to get any information on what happened in these books. So just keep listening. Exactly. Talking to you, Robbie. So, I love you, bro. I just got to poke at him every once in a while. My best friend. So, yeah, dude. Yeah, we'll have to get him on. That will be a fun episode. We'll have to get him on one time, and we'll just have to talk how he got me back into Star Wars and probably how he regrets it now.
He's created a monster.
It's alive.
Oh my gosh. No, and I do think, especially with book 3, Victory's Price came out last month, I believe, beginning of March. Yeah. So, some podcasts wait 3 months, some different times, but we just thought, you know what, let's get this covered, all 3 of them, before Bad Batch starts, and we can just really be fresh on that. But, yeah, so definitely spoilers. Everyone know that.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely spoilers. So spoilers. Here's your chance. All right. Spoiler warning's over. We're continuing. Alphabet Squadron, Book 1 by Alexander Freed, released in 2019. Of course, published by Del Rey. Excellent book. What's fun about these books is just the way he tells the story. It's very descriptive. It's a lot of fun. You actually, to me, especially me, I felt these characters. I honestly connected with them right off the bat. With Erica Quell, now Tenzin, Will Lark, Kairos, Chas. I mean, the only one I probably didn't really relate to was ITO, because I don't know what it's like being a droid. But, I even still somewhat connected with that character, because it was, all these characters were so off the wall, not what you're used to from Star Wars. Yes, they're pilots, but all these pilots come from diverse backgrounds, which is awesome. But they all come from troubled pasts. And I like the fact, especially with this trilogy, we're following, Yerica Quell, who was an elite TIE pilot with the Empire, who ends up post-Endor joining the New Republic. And it's a very interesting story, because that kind of stuff was happening. I mean, even if you just sat back and watched, people are going to cross the line. There's always happens.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw that post World War II, post World War One. I mean, people always cross over. I mean, that's why the U.S. has a space program. It's because of German scientists that crossed the line. So, I mean, it happens. So to see it fleshed out in these books, to me, was quite enjoyable. And it hooked me from the beginning with the action, with the speed, with everything going on. I loved it. And I think what really threw me for a loop, and this is the one thing that really threw me for a loop in these books, is we have all these new characters. Then they bring in a staple character to kind of say, this is still Star Wars. Remember these people. And we get Hera Syndulla from Star Wars Rebels. And when Hera first entered the scene, I about lost my mind reading this book. Because, I'm a huge Rebels fan. Love it. And to have Hera in here as commanding the squadron, it was just, to me, it was great. It was awesome. Alphabet Squadron. David, how about you?
Oh my gosh. I really like everything you said. The Hera Syndulla thing, definitely, by putting her in here, I just absolutely loved it. And it got better with each book, particularly the third one, the role that Hera plays. But, what I would say in this first installment, the first book of the trilogy, it was really enjoyable for me. It pulled me in, just like it did for you. I've said it in many different podcast recordings that you and I have done together, brother. Do we care about the characters? And and if you do, it's enjoyable and it's captivating and you're pulled in. And so for this being post Return of the Jedi, like in my mind's eye, I go back to 1983 and seeing Return of the Jedi opening night, at the theater back in my home state of Michigan. And then, here we are getting all this stuff after. Now, I know that there was, Thrawn, Heir to the Empire, and all that kind of stuff, after Return of the Jedi. But, I've said this before, I just didn't read all that because of where I was in grad school and so on and so forth. So for me, this kind of new publishing initiative, like, for example, with Shattered Empire, that comic, I got all 4 of those and read those, and that was very interesting. And we see some elements in that come over to these 3 books. For example, the Messenger, and we can talk about that more in a little bit. But Shattered Empire, this trilogy, particularly this book, starts off and gives me more background and story, in terms of what happened after Return of the Jedi. On the one hand, I just want to stay with the celebration on Endor. I loved it. And, Luke looking at the blue glowies and our heroes won and the Empire's defeated. I love that. I could stay there forever. On the other hand, it was very interesting to look into the galaxy as it tries to get the dust to settle. You start asking questions like, how does a new government, the New Republic, go about doing that? What do you do with defectors and prisoners of war from the Empire's side? Those are fascinating things, and you alluded to those. I would also say this, that, listeners know that I'm a clinical psychologist, so when I read this first book and all 3 of them, it fascinates me, this character ITO, or I don't know if it's ITO, this interrogation droid as a therapist. That's where I think Alexander Freed has this kind of like twisted sense of humor, I mean, I've seen him speak and he seems very dry, I've seen him on the Star Wars Book Club, they're hosted by Kristen Baver. He seems very dry, but this is funny. And I thought it was brilliant. It was even chilling, though, because like I think about as a therapist, as a psychologist, you want to be empathic, warm, and inviting. But to sit there and do a therapy session with an interrogation droid that has a needle sticking out of it, I just don't know that. I just laugh. I just don't know that is conducive for the kind of, I feel at ease talking to you, droid with a needle sticking out of it. But I thought that was just great how he did that. And so, yeah, really enjoyed the book. and I enjoyed how it ended, and left me waiting for Shadowfall, the second book. So
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it was. This was to me the perfect book to start off. I mean, you always hear stories where things start off and it starts off rocky and then gets going. This to me, this was a great start to the series. There was nothing in this book I did not enjoy. So, yes, Alphabet Squadron was incredible, and we got introduced to Alphabet Squadron, who of course is Erica Quell flying the X-wing, Nap Tenzin in the Y-wing, Weil Lark in the A-wing, Kairos in the U-wing, beat up U-wing, I should say, and Chas Nachadik in the B-wing. That's why it's called the Alphabet Squadron, because none of the ships are the same, and they're all alphabet letters. So, and it was a hastily assembled crew too, which was I enjoyed. They were all misfits, which made it unique. We got Bad Batch coming out, and this was essentially the Bad Batch of the New Republic. I mean, they were misfits, but they got the job done, and they did it well. So that's what made it so enjoyable for me to say. We also got introduced to Shadow Squadron, which becomes their their foil throughout these books. The elite fighting force of the Empire. It's the 200 and what was it? 200 and 204th, yeah. TIE Fighter Squadron, which are by reputation, in the books you find out they're the best of the best. I mean, there was nobody matching the 204th in their skills as a fighting unit. So the fact that that Alphabet Squadron is head to head with the 204 tells you how good this Bad Batch of pilots are.
Wow.
So.
Well, and they're headed up by Colonel Shakara Naresh. We do, hear about her in Alphabet Squadron. We do see her in the TIE Fighter comic, so you can get a visual of her. And then, I think the thing that I was going to mention, and I did allude to the ending, we get some of these chapters that Alexander Freed does on this character named Devin, and you end up, at the end of the book realizing that it's Soren Keyes, and you learn about him at the beginning, and he was the one who encouraged Eureka to leave, after, Shadow Wing and all that stuff does parts of Operation Cinder. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was pretty cool, setting the stage for book 2, and him really coming back to be kind of like the beginning of the inner book flap on Shadow Wing, like he returns to be the head of the spear of Shadowwing starting in book 2. But I thought that was pretty neat too, kind of getting some background on Soren Keyes. He's a different kind of Imperial, and you really see that play out in book 2 and then obviously in book 3. But I liked how he did that, how Freed set that up with this particular character, Soren Keyes. But yeah, and of course it was interesting. I don't know for you, like seeing Operation Cinder, in Shadow or Shattered Empire, forgive me, the comic, mm-hmm. and then seeing it here, very, very interesting. And I'm guessing, our listeners have, some recollection of Shattered Empire and it really following Han and Luke and Leia, after Endor, and you really get some nice visuals of these messengers that have these kind of clear, transparent plates that you see the Emperor's face appear in them, and they're really cool. And we'll talk more, really, probably the most in book 3 about these messengers. So, but I thought it was neat how Alexander Freed uses them as well and makes it consistent with that comic that Marvel had put out. So kudos to him for that, and they're really neat.
Very good. Very good. They are really neat. And yeah, the messenger was the fact that they tied that messenger into was awesome as well. So a lot of great stuff still to come. We got a lot more to talk about. So we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back and jump into Shadowfall. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron and David here. Star Wars Reactions. We are continuing our Alphabet Squadron Trilogy reactions, per se. So we discussed Alphabet Squadron Book 1 before the break. And Book 2 is up next, which, of course, is Shadowfall. Now, of course, Shadowfall was actually released in 2020. So it gave us something to read during lockdown. But I will say, of the trilogy, this is the book I struggled with the most. I had the hardest time reading this particular book. It didn't grab me like the first one, but it was still good. A lot of great things happened in it, and the twist at the end of this book just, oh my gosh, took my breath away. Which I'm glad I didn't finish it till Victory's Price came out, or else I probably would have died having to wait with that twist at the end. Oh man. So Shadowfall, again, 2020 release. Alexander Freed picks up, right after Alphabet Squadron ends. We have Squadron still in pursuit of the 204th. And what's great about these books, and it's something I should have mentioned earlier, is, we got the whole squadron: Yrica, Nath, Weil, Kairos, Chas. We have the supporting characters like Karen Aiden, and ITO, and Hera. But we don't stay focused on just one character. Like, we don't stay focused on Erica Quell. There are very in-depth stories through Shadowfall, Alphabet Squadron, and Victory's Price, focusing on other characters in these books, which is awesome. And I love that about, especially Victory's Price when we get to it, but Shadowfall 2 doesn't focus solely on what's going on with you would think it, after reading Alphabet Squadron, you would think everything would be focused on Yrica Quell, and it's not. It's focused on the squadron as a whole, and to me, that made that's what makes the whole series good. It's not like the Thrawn series by Timothy Zahn, which I absolutely love, but we're focused on the one character of Thrawn. This is focused on the whole squadron, and I think that's awesome. David?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting, I didn't, Aaron and I, just so you guys know, we didn't talk beforehand about, our favorite book in this, or which one was the most difficult to read, and so on. But, Aaron and I do put together show notes, on Google Docs, and, I put stuff in, he put stuff in, but I did not know that, he felt that way about this. I felt the same way, interestingly, about Shadowfall. The beginning, it didn't grab me like the first book, Alphabet Squadron. This, I felt like I was just, trudging through it for a long period of time. Hera is not in this as much, and neither is Kairos. Really, not a whole lot. It seems like there's more of a focus on Chas, and it focuses really on her history, spirituality, religion, the new group that she's in there, and stuff like that. So yes, I Troy, Cerberon, the whole setting, there was a lot there to get through. Ultimately, though, and again, consistent with what Aaron just said, as this ends, I I really enjoyed that. The kind of the what would I say? Not the second half, maybe the last, like the last third of the book. Maybe that's a good way to put it. The first third, the second third, not much, but the last third I really enjoyed, and how the whole Troith and the trap goes haywire for Will and Nath, because they're trying to trap Shadow Wing, and it doesn't work. I think maybe what some of the stuff I liked the most in Shadowfall was the way that Alexander Freed describes the black hole, and not just the visual of it, but then when he describes the Sith temple on that, what is it, like a planetoid or something small that Quell is on, and
almost like an asteroid.
Almost like an asteroid.
That's right. That's how I was interpreting it as I was reading.
Right. Thank you. And there's a Sith temple there, and then there's even a Sith ship in there, which is like, wow! It was really neat, and I love how he described Quell, Yurka Quell, trying to get it open, trying to figure out how to do that. And I need to read it again just to kind of look at all of that, but I really enjoyed that. And then, like Aaron said, the way he ended it, I'm like, what? And it just was like, that was a big twist. And of course, unlike Aaron, I actually read it and had to wait quite a while. I was like, wait, what's going to happen with Yurka? Here she is, going back to, Soran Keys and the 204th Fighter Wing. And I thought, God, is she really returning? Is she going to be a bad guy again? A good guy? I had no clue, honestly. And so I really, like I said, really like how that ended. I have to admit, I was sad to see ITO end, but I didn't feel that bad about Karen Adan dying. I guess I didn't really feel that close to that guy. But I guess the only thing I liked about him is he got Alphabet Squadron together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, definitely understand that, and I like how you said that, because that's exactly how I felt too. To me, the book didn't really pick up and start to catch my interest till the last third, which is about the same for me, because I'll be the first to admit, that's one thing we've always done here on our show is, if we're not enjoying it, we're going to tell you, but we're going to find something good to say about it.
That's right.
And there's always going to be something good you can say it. And the last third of this book was actually incredible, and thoroughly enjoyable. And I'm glad you brought up that Sith temple, because, man, that was not what I expected. To me, it was so different, so weird. The only exposure to a Sith temple we have is what we saw in Rebels.
Yes, brother.
In Twilight of the Apprentice.
Right.
And that was incredible to see. But then to see this temple, the remains of this temple, it was, and everything she had to do to get into it, literally the personal agony she had to go through, and the feelings and the emotions she had to deal with, just trying to get in, trying to trick the Sith temple to let her in, per se. It was just, it literally, even just reading it was a psychological mind game.
Yes.
So,
well, and the way he describe it, like I gotta go back, like he was describing how she had to wait for it to align with like the black hole or something, the power of that and the pull. And now I got to go back and read that because it was so cool. I actually did tonight before you and I got on. I was going back through the end of Shadowfall and looking at Soren Keyes's discussion talk with Sloan, Admiral Sloan. That was really neat to see. And then, of course, it ends with Quell reporting for duty to Soren Keyes. But I got to go back and just read that again because it is so psychologically powerful, and it's so eerie and so cool how he describes that temple and the black hole and the colors and the way it looks and things bend and perception changes. And it was so good. And I, like I said, I'd recommend people, if you've already read it, get through it, check that out again. And I'm definitely going back through that.
Oh, absolutely. There are definitely books that you can definitely enjoy reading again and again and again. So, but yeah, Shadowfall is great. And that ending with Quell, when she ends up on board the Imperial ship and it's like Lieutenant Yerika Quell reporting for duty. I'm like, what the, what did, and I'm like, at this point, to finish the book, I started it, the physical copy, reading it. It's when I initially started it, like when it first came out, got through like 3 or 4 chapters. I'm like, I can't read this. Put it down and was going to go back to it, but then Thrawn came out and High Republic came out, and I just never got back around to it.
Right.
So when Victory's Price came out, I grabbed it on Audible because I had an extra credit and listened to it. And let's just say that was my first bad Audible experience. Because the narrator of that book was just absolutely terrible. God bless him. It was very difficult to listen to, but there was enough, the storytelling, the story itself in the last third was so good, it kept my interest as the story, not the reader. So when she said that, I had literally backed it up like 4 minutes and re-listened to it, the whole thing again. And because I just could not wrap my head that this character who we had seen from the first book defect and come over and really take charge, just kind of fall apart and go back to where she started. It just kind of threw me. And then the book ended and I was like, I'm like, fortunately Victory Price is out. Bam, hit play.
That's right. Well, and what I was going to clarify there is, okay, I was confused for a second because I know you and I did talk specifically about the Audible book for Shadowfall and how it was just really not very good. And I, and we've mentioned this again on previous episodes, I got physical copies of all 3 of these. I did, because I'd had the previous 2. I wanted to get the third one in physical form, but I did get Victory's Price in both Audible and physical. Mm-hmm. And you and I were a little nervous how it would go because it's not Mark Thompson or some of the other people that we think about, but January LaVoy does the narration for Victory's Price, and I thought she did a great job.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh yeah, the Audible edition I listened to between Shadowfall and Victory's Price, it was night and day. Victory's Price. Excuse me. Victory's Price for Audible on the audiobook was incredible. The performance was on par. It was great. It was 100 times better than the Shadowfall performance. But yeah, no, the ending to Shadowfall, which is back where we were, was just that twist. And the way Alexander Freed wrote it, it was the perfect twist that just hooks you and just literally drags you kicking and screaming into Victory's Price, because you want that closure at that point, because it left you hanging. Remember how you felt when you saw Lando go flying off in the Falcon at the end of Empire Strikes Back, and you don't know what's wrong with Han? That's the kind of hook you get.
That's right. It is. It's a really good one, and it is. It's a perfect lead into Victory's Price. I didn't see it coming.
No, I definitely did not, and I think that's what made it so enjoyable is that twist you don't see coming. So, but yeah, let's keep it rolling. Let's go right into Victory's Price. Like I said, this Victory's Price is the third book. It came out this year, 2021. This book was the perfect ending to this trilogy. It was, to me, this was just like the first book. As soon as I cracked the cover or hit play on Audible, it had me hooked and it drug me straight through the book. I listened to it. I literally had it listened to in 2 days.
Oh my gosh, that's
it was
man.
that
That's
it was that good. And I loved every minute of it. The story, the action. We get more of Hera in this book. We get more. Literally, it is down to the grind at this point. They are just grinding it down on the 204th, and it is just, and we get and it all culminates at the Battle of Jakku. Who would have thought?
yeah.
Yeah. And for me, it blows my mind even more that this one ends at the Battle of Jakku. I just finished Lost Stars. It ended at the Battle of Jakku.
That's right. That's
and
right.
I still have Empire's End to read, and I know it ends at Jakku. So it's like, what? All these new books are ending at Jakku.
They really are. Yeah. Yeah.
To quote Luke Skywalker, that really is nowhere.
From Last Jedi, yes.
From Jakku, no, that really is nowhere. Victory's Price was great because, again, like I said, it's not focusing on just Eric Quell, it's focusing on all the characters, and the primary focus of this particular book, honestly, a lot of it was focused on Weil and Nath, and their relationship, trying to get through, knowing that Erica's, they find out Erica's turncoat, and the squad trying to deal with that, and Weil takes command of the squadron, and it's a madhouse throughout this book. They lose their ship. They get a Star Destroyer now. It's just all over the place. I mean, it is just incredible how much is going on in Victory's Price. And the way it just all comes down to the wire, to the end there, and finding out Quell's motivation on why she's doing what she's doing. It's just, I definitely one of my favorite books to come out since Disney took over.
Yeah, you and I have, we talk quite a bit and we text quite a bit, and we felt very similarly about this book as well. I think about how difficult it is to write a book, let alone 2 books, 3 books, and can you end one on a high note? And I would argue that he ended on a very high note. I thought Victory's Price was incredible. I like how he does let us know we're really at 11 months, after the Battle of Endor. And then, we lead up to, basically, we know the Battle of Jakku is 1 year after the Battle of Endor. So that was really cool, how he set the stage. And just like you said, I guess I didn't, when I was reading Alphabet Squadron and Shadowfall, I'm telling you, Aaron, I was not thinking about the Battle of Jakku. I really wasn't looking ahead like that for some reason. And I, in the show notes, I wanted to make sure I said that knowing that Alphabet Squadron was there battling at Jakku, not necessarily on the ground, but up in space, was really cool to know that. And then, I think for me, maybe the coolest thing of all, and one of my most favorite parts, in this one, compared to Alphabet Squadron and Shadowfall, is when we see, General Harrison Dula being there at the Battle of Jakku and ultimately flying the Ghost out of a Star Destroyer that's falling apart, and the Deliverance, right? And she flies out into the battle above Jakku. It's just incredible. And you mentioned it, like I said a little bit ago, and I felt this way in Alphabet Squadron and Shadowfall, that there's two words that I really think about, and the way that Alexander Freed describes these battles and these fights, it's I think of two words: a slugfest and a grind. As he's describing the rebellion and the Empire fighting it out, and I was exhausted. This guy exhausted me, in reading these, and particularly in this one, I'm like, oh my gosh, man. We got it. The good guys have got to get the upper hand and save the day. I wrote a note to myself. It was rough, man, getting through this.
Yeah.
And I'd say this: Freed has a way of making me think everyone that I care about has died.
Oh gosh. Oh, don't get me started on that.
I thought Will. It's actually Will. I know you're saying Weil.
Wow, it's Will. Yes, you're right. Yeah. It is Will.
My job is to help there, and everyone knows that. And I always back Aaron up here. But thought he was dead twice.
Yep.
Thought Chas was dead. Thought Kairos was dead.
Hera.
And then Hera. And
oh my gosh, that's the one that killed me.
You got to talk about it, because you had texted me, or we called or something, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's no way that he got there's no way he got permission.
I text you, I'm like, if he did what I think he just did,
right,
I am never ever gonna read another one of his books.
Right.
I was so upset at that point. I'm like, this can't be happening.
Gosh. It was so. And then, you and I were talking, it's like, there's no way that Dave Filoni, and Lucas gave him permission, because they really, and I guess really Filoni with Rebels, creating a character. I was like, there's no way. But the way he describes him, I'm like, I think he did. And then he finally, Freed, he let me off the hook several times with knowing that our heroes were safe. But he just did it in a way I thought that wasn't usual, and when he reintroduced them, I was just like, oh, I had this sigh of relief, and I'm like, oh, our heroes are safe. And so I really, really enjoyed how he did that. And I went back through, I mentioned this to you. I think I might have, I don't know if I put it on Twitter or if I texted it. Can't remember. Like, I went back through the last 4.5 hours of Audible.
Mm-hmm.
And because of all this that we're describing, it's just, it was incredible. I thought all these people were gone. Did we win the battle? We're at Jakku. Do the good guys defeat Shadow Wing? All this kind of stuff. So I had listened to the entire thing, and I went back and did that. And I was really glad that I did, because I just really kind of got it fully straight in my head, everything that went down. And, and maybe, depending on when we want to take a break, one of the things I wanted to talk about was, this real, huge issue related to the messenger and what Soren Keyes is trying to do and how Quell is trying to stop him. Do we want to jump into that, or do we need to take a break, or you tell me?
No, we're going to take actually a quick break, then we'll jump into that. So hang with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Aaron and David here. We're talking Victory's Price. We're talking Alphabet Squadron Trilogy. David, pick it up. You were talking about the messenger, my friend.
Yeah. So again, I first saw the messenger, just some backstory, and maybe you as well. I first saw this character in the Marvel limited series, 4 issues, comic called Shattered Empire. And we see these messengers, red cloaks, clear faceplate, where we see, the emperor's face come into view and give instructions to, imperial officers, and so forth, to do Operation Cinder. And this is all predicated on the emperor dying. This was kind of like his, plan B. If he's killed at some point on, the second Death Star or in the whole battle, then Operation Cinder is to commence. So that's the first time I had seen the messenger. And when Alexander Freed brings another messenger, there's several of them, into play in the second book in Shadowing. It's very eerie how he does it, and I love how he does it. But then it really plays out, Aaron, as you and I know, really in detail in the third book. And I did not know where Alexander Freed was going to go with this, because a real big part of this story, kind of like, the major battle between Shadowing and Alphabet Squadron. But there's this other story, Aaron, that we know, which is Soren Keyes is trying to figure out what is inside of this messenger. Why does it do what it does? Why does it go to the people it goes to, the certain imperial officers? And it leads to this really neat concept of the Emperor's databank. And Soren Keyes and Quell learn that it's in the Verity district right there on Coruscant, not far from the Jedi Temple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or, where the Emperor is now taken over. And this thing really fascinated me. And, again, from a psychological perspective, the human aspect, the part where, Soren Keyes is like, what the Emperor did was basically keep notes on all of the imperial soldiers, higher ranking officials. Even Soren Keyes and Quell talk about, some data pusher on some remote planet who does it because, they'd be killed if they didn't do it. And how, Soren Keyes has this desire for these imperial, at all levels, these imperials at all levels, to have some chance at a life after the Empire loses, because he knows the Empire is going to lose. And that was fascinating. Did you see that coming? I mean, I did not. I'm like, where is he going with this messenger? And it ended up being this huge, huge thing. And I thought it was brilliant.
It really was brilliant. It was not a twist you do not expect. Trying to get into that database, and it's not for a diabolical purpose. What I like about what Freed did in this book, he did it in Victory's Price, is he made you sympathetic to oh my gosh, I just blanked his name.
Oh, Soren Keyes.
Soren Keyes, yeah. He made you sympathetic to Soren Keyes and his cause. He's not trying to be a bad guy. He's trying to make it so, knowing this war is over, knowing they have lost, he's trying to make it so his people survive. He doesn't want them to end up on trial. He doesn't want them to end up in prison camps. He doesn't want them. He wants them to be able to go home and have a life.
Yeah.
And that's his ultimate motivation. It's not the destruction of the Republic. It's not the reestablishment of the Empire. It's his entire goal is to move on.
Yeah.
From the 204th. And he wants his people to move on from the 204th. And the only way to do that is to destroy that information. And I thought that was a perfect a perfect plan for the story. I thought it was a twist that makes you almost, especially at the end when he's dogfighting with Quell, you really almost are pulling for him because you want him to succeed. Because he's not like the other Imperials that we have been exposed to, where he's not a Tarkin. He's not being diabolical. He is literally just trying to save his people.
Yeah, and it's and there are I put a note here in the our show notes, and just to kind of guide me and remind me of what I wanted to say in this with you, and I wrote down pawns, confusion, lack of knowledge, and I really think about that when it comes to the Emperor. You really see in the movies, you see in the books that he really does see people as pawns. The whole thing is to get confusion, so people don't know what end is up. And there is a lack of knowledge. Like you'd mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the first book and people leaving the Empire and coming over to the New Republic, and how we saw that in World War I, World War II. And one of the things that I think about there is how, there were German soldiers clearly who were horrendous people and generals. Like when you think about Joseph Mengele and some of the studies he was doing on twins and so on and so forth, he just sounds like, a sociopath. And of course, we've talked about that before. But there's no question that there were German soldiers who they basically had the gun pointed at them and were told, look, you need to do this or you're going to be shot. Like all these other people in the concentration camp, or here's a knife to your throat if you don't do what we say. Mm-hmm. And so with Keyes, the part that I sympathized with was some of the examples he gave in that last discussion with Quell at the end. It's very powerful. And he does talk about, these people in obscure, imperial roles who never held a blaster, never shot and killed anybody, got their city or their planet got run over roughshod by the Empire, and they just did what they had to survive to help their wife, help their husband, help their kids. And that's where I very much agree that I wouldn't want those persons imprisoned, given a death sentence, anything like that. But the worst of the worst, and this is kind of Quell's thing, and she does talk about it in that discussion, they need to be held accountable. These persons who did do Operation Cinder, and did other horrible things. They do, like I think about the Nuremberg trials, and bringing some of these people to justice. And so I don't want it to be, it's interesting because I've heard other people talk about this. I've seen it a little bit on Twitter. And even not even related to Star Wars is this issue is there, like I put a little note here for Aaron and I, are the rebels good and right? Are the Imperials good and right? New Republic, even Keyes asks Quell, do you believe that the New Republic, that their justice will be fair towards us? And everybody who gets defeated in every war has to wonder that. And that's a very interesting question, because then in the very last chapter, if you see Mon Mothma and Hera discussing kind of what you said, Aaron, that Keyes was saying, that you've got to move past this. We can't keep warring for the next 20, 30 years. Even Mon Mothma says it. She says, I'm not going to make an example of Yrica Quell. We've got to heal. We've got to move past this. And so I find those discussions very fascinating, on a number of levels. And again, we could talk for days and weeks and months about it. But I think what you're going to see in me, as Aaron and I do this, is I will come back around to this about, what's right, what's wrong, who's good, who's bad. Now, I will say this, Aaron, we do know when you look at, 1977, Star Wars A New Hope, Look, there's none of this. There's no books.
Mm-mm.
We know who's good. We know who's bad. Look, Darth Vader comes in black, right? Princess Leia's wearing white. Luke pretty
Yep.
similar. You know, we know Obi-Wan's a good guy, and we know the Death Star's bad, and you're going to blow it up. You know, now I
Yeah.
think you might have read this in Lost Stars, where I think they were talking about, how many people died on the Death Star, right? And kind of starting that process of, you got a bunch of people schlepping around the first Death Star who are in the maintenance crew, and all of a sudden it blows up. I mean, now the thing blew up Alderaan, but here comes Luke and blows it up, and are there a bunch of people on the Death Star? Like, when I was a kid in 1977, I did not ask the question, are there a bunch of good people on the Death Star? No. Tarkin got blown up. All the bad guys got blown up. They shot that green laser out and blew up Alderaan. And Luke and the Rebels won, and they're celebrating. We know who's good. We know who's bad. And that is something that is interesting, Aaron, about this wave of books now. And I don't know that they're trying to blur, the line between what's right and wrong, who's good or bad. I wonder if it's more just to try to, keep books interesting, and get you to think, which is fine. But ultimately, I do come down on the side of, there are good guys, there's bad guys, and part of what I said there are people who are pawns, who are confused, who are used by bad guys, and you don't want to see them get punished. So that's part of where I do agree with Keyes, but I don't fully agree with him.
Yeah. No, it's great points. It's you're right. When the original trilogy came out, everything was literally black and white, good and bad, Empire bad, Rebellion good. It was simple as that.
Right.
I mean, to be honest, when you look at it, absolutely it was Empire bad, Rebellion good. So I guess according to Obi-Wan's standard, you could say that the original trilogy was a Sith, but because it's absolute at that point. But and only Sith deal in absolutes. But in the latest stories, you begin to see, and especially in the novels, not necessarily in the books, but you get to see it in the novels, and you get to see it too in the animated shows. We saw it with Agent Kallus in Rebels, where you have a guy who is in Kallus pursuing the Ghost and pursuing the Spectres, the Lothal rebels as they call them. But as he realizes, he has one event in his life that when he realizes maybe he's not doing what's right, and that light turns on.
Right.
And we see the redemption of Kallus at that point. How many others are there in the shadow that just have never been really presented to or exposed with that kind of information or that kind of experience, that aren't able to have that? I mean, we see that. I mean, like I said, I just finished Lost Stars today. We see that in Lost Stars, with Thane in Lost Stars. He had that. He left the Empire, was on his own for a little bit, then had kind of joined the rebellion, not because he was, pro-rebellion, but because he was, wanting to, give a black eye to the Empire. And not because he believed in what the rebellion did, but as time went on, he bought into the values of the rebellion. And then you have the opposite of Sienna, his love at that point, who's rising through the ranks of the Empire, and she does not comprehend why he would join the rebellion. She is actually so upset he joined the rebellion. I mean, and just keeps fighting the good fight for the Empire, and is trying to figure out how he had been deceived. And then all of a sudden realizes, by the time it's too late, that, it's over. It's, the light goes on for her, and it's the Battle of Jakku. The story's ending, and when her light is finally starting to come on, and it's just, there is that gray area that these books have started exploring, and it's that gray area which has been so, honestly, so addicting to tear into, because for so long it was black and white, and now we got that gray coming in, and that's, I love it. I've enjoyed it.
Well, one other example I thought about as you were talking is, if people didn't know, Aaron and I covered every episode of Star Wars Resistance.
Tamra,
right? And you're exactly Tamra, and we see her and her desire to in her not just desire to be part of the Empire, but the appeal of the Empire was the order that it brought, right? And so, yes, confusion. Of course, we see, I was trying to think of that agent who is talking in her ear the whole time. And gosh, I can see the actress, the voice actress too. Tyranny.
Tyranny.
Yes. And it's short for tyranny. Yeah, she's in Tam's ear, confusing her, just like I mentioned in the notes here. The issue of confusion, lack of knowledge, and all this kind of stuff. And so they played that out pretty well over 2 seasons. And so, yes, Tamra is another example. And we see Kaz and the good guys, eventually, win her back and go from there. But, yeah. So I wanted to bring that up because, something that, Aaron and I were talking about beforehand is that, and you might have seen the picture that I said to Aaron, I said, hey, will you post this on Instagram? Our Instagram account is all the notes that I took within Victory's Price. I mean, tons. And quite honestly, when you read Alphabet Squadron, Shadow Wing, and Victory's Price, these books are dense. There's a lot in them. And there's a lot of details, and there's a lot more stuff that Aaron and I could go over. We could go over each book in incredible detail. There's a lot there, and it's hard to remember all of it. But Frida's just, it's, and I don't say dense meaning like someone's not smart. These are dense. These are thick with lots of information in them. And I'm like, man, I'm just trying to keep my head straight in a lot of these. So just know that, Aaron and I, made a decision to kind of give an overview, what we liked, what we didn't like, and to go over some of the issues. And I made a point, talking with Aaron about this issue of the rebellion versus the empire and what we're seeing in a lot of the books here since, Disney bought Lucasfilm. So like Aaron said, not all just here are good guys, here's bad guys, here are these gray areas. And we've even seen it too, and Aaron and I don't think we've talked about the issue of gray Jedi. I hear people talking about that all the time too. But I'm not going to get into that now just because of time constraints and so on. But a lot of gray being introduced in our Star Wars here. So there we go.
Perfect. Definitely is. It's like I said, like David said, we could go on for days about these books, breaking down every detail. But we want you to read them too. If you like reading them, or if you like listening to books, grab these. They're, like I said, it's worth it. This overall story is just so intense and so good. It's a very rewarding series to read. So check out the Alphabet Squadron Trilogy, available on Amazon or anywhere you buy books. Get it now and enjoy. But we're not done yet. We still have a psychology corner to get to, David.
Oh, yeah.
We do. So why don't you go ahead and take off with that psychology corner?
Absolutely. It struck me as I was going through the books, and again, most recently, Victory's Price, that, I was like, wait, I need to, talk about doing a PSA, a public service announcement for our listeners. I wanted to, kind of talk about different types of therapists, particularly, when we consider, ITO. I don't have ITO in my list of therapists, but I thought this would be a perfect time in my psychology corner, over the years that I've been a psychologist, 28 years, going on 29 years, I've had a lot of people say to me, wait, are you a psychologist or a psychiatrist? Are you a psychotherapist? Tell me and so I don't like, quite honestly, how close the name psychiatrist and psychologist is. I wish it wasn't that close. I wish there was a bigger demarcation between those. But I do enjoy spending time, educating and teaching, my clients and other people who want to know the differences. And so I'll start with, being a psychologist. There are master's level psychologists where they've earned an undergraduate degree, and then they've gone on to get a master's degree. But when I started grad school back in the early 90s, there was a move by psychology departments across our country that they would not have any more terminal master's programs, that they wanted everyone going to clinical psychology programs to finish up with their doctorate, which is their PhD. And so when I went to grad school, I had finished my bachelor's degree, applied to grad school, and at that point, my master's degree was a step along the way to the doctorate. And so ultimately, psychologists typically have a PhD, okay, which is, again, short for a doctor of philosophy. And you can have a PhD in chemistry, you can have a PhD in biology, mechanical engineering, a lot of different fields. But my PhD and other psychologists, it's in either clinical psychology, counseling psychology, school psychology. You can have all of those. Now there is one other degree that is considered a doctoral degree for psychologists. I do have a few friends who have it. It's called a PsyD. It's PSY.D. And that's really considered a doctor of psychology. It is more therapy based than my degree, a PhD, which is research-based. I had to do a master's thesis and a doctoral dissertation. In essence, I had to write 2 books, get those approved by my professors to get each of those degrees, in addition to all the coursework. So a PsyD is they call them a doctor, but that's more therapy emphasis in their graduate training, whereas I had a balance between research and therapy in getting the PhD. Now, there's a mouthful right there. So if we move on to a psychiatrist, psychiatrists have an MD. Okay. Individuals go to medical school and they can decide, do I want to be a podiatrist, right? A foot doctor? Do I want to be a cardiologist, a heart doctor? Do I want to be a nephrologist, right? The person who's looking at your kidneys. Pulmonologist, right? That's a lung doctor. You can choose any of these different paths. Some people choose to be a psychiatrist, right? Go to med school, get the training, and then really emphasize psychiatry. So they have an MD and they prescribe medications. Going back to a psychologist myself with a PhD, I do not prescribe medications, nor do I want to. I work with physicians every day and psychiatrists every day. I would rather them do the medication component. Now, there are some psychologists in this country that do have prescribing privileges, but they've had additional training. But that's a rare number of psychologists in our country. But again, a big difference is therapy versus medicine. A psychotherapist, okay, I have this on the list. This can be anybody. A psychiatrist can call themselves a psychotherapist because they do therapy. Me as a psychologist, I can say that. People who are licensed clinical social workers, I'll talk about them, licensed mental health counselors. A lot of people can call themselves a psychotherapist. But the problem is, if you're a consumer out there, you might, you're not going to know what their background and training is unless you specifically ask them. It's a generic term. I know here in the state of Florida, where Aaron and I live, a psychotherapist, that person, if they're not a psychologist, they cannot call themselves a psychologist. That is a protected term by state law in Florida here. Now, I'm not sure about other states, but I know here in Florida it's a protected term. So psychotherapist would be the most generic term that I'm going to discuss. Let me give you a few more. Licensed clinical social worker. This is an LCSW. These are master's level persons, my wife is a social worker. She has her master's degree in social work. And these persons can do therapy, okay? It's not a bachelor's degree. It is a master's degree. So it's typically 2 years of additional training after the bachelor's degree. And they can do therapy. And a lot of licensed clinical social workers do call themselves psychotherapists. Another one, and again, this is all letter soup, but we're trying to make sense of it for people. LMHC, that's a licensed mental health counselor, and that is also a master's degree. A little bit of a different training approach, though, than a social worker's training. But both are still master's level. And again, I've heard persons that are LMHCs, licensed mental health counselors, call themselves a psychotherapist. The last one that I'll discuss is called an LMFT. This is a licensed marriage and family therapist. Again, this is a master's level degree. And these persons typically, like the title describes, they really focus on marriages and families versus a more individualized approach. Okay, so there's a rundown of psychologists, psychiatrists, psychotherapists, licensed clinical social worker, licensed mental health counselor, and a licensed marriage and family therapist. So there's a lot there. And so I hope that helps people to know just a little bit more about some of the differences between these professions. And so we definitely need to cover those in the psychology corner. Now, the last thing I was going to do, and I thought this would, again, help all of our listeners become good psychologists, is, Chasna Chaddock really has this experience of hearing voices. Particularly, in this third book, Victory's Price. And so, I thought it really would open the door to talking about the difference between psychoses and neuroses. Now, they're terms, you don't really hear the word neuroses much anymore, Aaron, but typically neuroses are referring to depression and anxiety, right? If someone says, well, geez, you're neurotic. Yeah. You don't hear that a lot anymore, but it again would be basically trying to say, you're neurotic means you're really depressed or you're really anxious or a combination of both. And for our listeners to know, neuroses typically don't involve loss of touch or reality. That is more the realm of psychoses. And the most common psychosis is schizophrenia. Different movies have tried to portray this and stuff. But in the book, I was trying to figure out, is Chasna Chaddock, she's hearing voices. Now, two primary aspects of a psychosis is auditory hallucinations and visual hallucinations, hearing things that are not there and seeing things that are not there. And so what we hear with Chas is she's hearing voices, for example, like from that cult leader, Lettich, right? And, Aaron knows this, maybe some of our listeners saw it. I reached out to Alexander Freed. I put it out on Twitter and I said, hey, what was kind of your angle? What were you looking at? Because clearly he has therapy references throughout all these three books, and obviously it's an interest to him, and having ITO as a therapist there as well. I just really wanted to know if he was going for the case that Chas was experiencing auditory hallucinations. And you kind of get a hint in the book, and I could grab the book, but I don't want to spend the time here, that really one time it's really kind of Chas talking to herself, hearing those voices. It's not her hearing voices as in she's psychotic or she's, experiencing auditory hallucinations. But I'm going to kind of try to get a hold of him and follow up and see if, he can actually discuss that at some point. That'd be kind of neat to know. But I just wanted our listeners to know that neuroses typically don't involve a loss of touch reality, but psychoses typically involve a loss of touch with reality. And like I said, two of the most common ways that people lose touch with reality is they hear auditory hallucinations and they see visual hallucinations. Now, in future psychology corners, I can go into more depth and explain, those things a little bit more. But at least for this one, I wanted to give kind of a definition of the different types of therapists out there, as well as a quick rundown of the difference between neuroses and psychoses. So there you go, Aaron, another psychology corner.
Perfect. I love your psychology corners.
Well, you're my biggest fan, man. I love
it. So I do got one question for you.
Yeah.
You talked about all the different types of psychologists and psychiatrists and all that. Where would you classify ITO?
Well, it's kind of interesting because earlier you mentioned, you're like, I don't know that I can really identify with ITO, a droid. What would I see? I would say a psychotherapist, kind of a generic kind of therapist, has some of that understanding. Although there's qualities, there are qualities of a psychiatrist I can hear in ITO. Kind of Freudian, one of the most famous psychiatrists ever. But that's a good question. I think my first gut reaction is kind of more just a psychotherapist with maybe not specific training as a psychologist, psychiatrist, or social worker, but more of just that kind of psychotherapist. But yeah, it would be the psychotherapist you don't want,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, that is interesting, my friend. That's another question I'd love for Alexander Freed to answer for us. How do you see ITO? What kind of therapist would you see that character as? But I've got a lot of questions for Alexander Freed. There's even one part I marked it, Aaron. Talk about the details. Towards the end of Victory's Price, I got the book right here. I'm going to grab it. It's before Chas meets up and goes back and meets up with Quell. Where do I have it here? Here it is. Here it is. On page 451 of the hardcover, Chas is actually seeing a therapist that is, quote, a bearded snake lady. What? What? I can just imagine Chas going to talk to a therapist that is a bearded snake lady. Wow. So, like I said, there's so much more I could do in terms of the psychology corner with, ITO and hearing voices by Chas and all kinds of stuff. But clearly, Alexander Freed, again, a reason why I really love these books is he really infuses psychology and therapy throughout all three of these books. So I really appreciate it. So hopefully one day he'll reach out and we can, exchange thoughts and ideas and stuff like that. So
there we go.
We'll see.
There we go. There you go. And to answer your question, based on your descriptions, I was kind of leaning toward their psychotherapist too. So.
Oh, good.
So.
Good.
All right. So with that wraps up our episode today. Of course, we would love to hear from you and find out what you think of the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. You can always hit us up right now on social media, on Twitter, SW Reactions Pod, and of course on Instagram, SW Reactions. I almost said Facebook, but we're in day 20 of Facebook held hostage.
Right.
But let us know what y'all think of Alphabet Squadron, and we'd love to hear from you and share y'all's thoughts. Of course, if you do want to talk more closely about it with one of us individually, of course, you can always hit me up on Twitter as the best place at TAHarris121079, or email me, Aaron at StarWarsReactions.com. David, if they want to talk to you about Alphabet Squadron or even your Psychology Corner, how would they go about doing that?
Absolutely. Twitter is at David_Motters. It's always been the same. And then email is David at StarWarsReactions.com. And curious to see if anybody has questions about anything within the Psychology Corner. So, again, hopefully people are enjoying it and learning, but I'd be more than happy to, message back and forth on Twitter with you or email.
Very good. Very good. Well, David, it has been a blast as always.
Oh, I absolutely enjoy it, buddy. We have such a good time with this, and so thankful, as always, that I get to record with you.
Awesome. Same here, my friend. Same here. And everybody, we want to take a moment just to say thank you for listening in. We appreciate each and every one of you. Are still praying for y'all. Stay healthy, have fun, stay safe. Remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
If you'd like to share your thoughts, you can email us at show@starwarsreactions.com for our show notes and the latest news from the Star Wars universe. Visit our website at www.starwarsreactions.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at SWReactionsPod or on Facebook at Star Wars Reactions. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on iTunes. This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.